It's a scary moment when someone walks up on stage with a handheld vocal microphone. And suddenly, you're feeling a lot like Forrest Gump, because life is not a box of chocolates, but you don't know what you're about to get. In today's video, I'm going to teach you all about processing handheld vocal microphones for speakers, not for singers. And because people's voices are so different and their mic technique is so different, it really is a mixed bag and you gotta be ready for anything. We'll go over the fundamental processing that I do and even jump into a few plugins and special techniques at the end, so you'll want to watch all the way through. If you're new here, my name is James and I help church sound techs, worship leaders, and tech directors eliminate the frustration and mystery around sound at church. So if that's you, go ahead and mash that subscribe button and we're glad you're here. Now this video is mostly about handheld vocal microphones because headset microphones are usually tailored to one person. They're not being passed around from person to person or sounding very different. After you get a headset mic dialed in, it usually stays very consistent and you don't have to make changes. But with a handheld vocal microphone, you've got a moving target because people are not using great mic technique all the time, and even if they are, they're an anomaly. There's this weird thing that happens tonally when we move from straight in front of somebody's mouth to off to the side, either over here or down here or even on the top of their head. Now, if you're wondering why I'm saying the top of their head, a lot of times in the theater, people will have head-worn microphones that can be woven into their wigs, but that's usually not what your pastor is going to put up with, so I doubt you're going to go that direction. But if you're doing a musical, by all means, put it on their forehead. So when you move a mic off axis from somebody's mouth, it usually tends to boost around 700 hertz. There's a graphic here from DPA microphones that talks about this, and you can see it pretty consistent across a bunch of different mic placement. Because most people giving announcements are not holding the microphone like this, they're usually holding it about right here or worse, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But the first big variable that you have in how the mic sounds different, aside from this little bump at 700 hertz, is the distance to their mouth. The best option would be for them to keep it very close to their mouth and pointed toward their mouth as much as possible. However, as you probably have noticed, most people don't have the discipline for this, and so a lot of them might start up here, kind of close to their chin, or some might kind of hold it down closer to their chest, and some even down by their belly button, and that's not a good thing at all. Hopefully you can give them some coaching and they can be aware enough of where they're holding the mic, because sometimes people get nervous when they're up on stage and they're speaking to a room full of people. They're not thinking about mic placement with the same tenacity that you are. Now, the level that you're getting sometimes shifts unexpectedly because somebody's holding it here and then they look over at their slides and suddenly the level gets lower because their mouth isn't pointing toward the microphone anymore. Some people will put it very close to their mouth, which is a good thing for our signal to noise ratio, or how much we have to turn it up to get the sound that we want versus the sound that we don't want. But the bass boost comes from proximity effect. Proximity effect is when we have a directional microphone and it gets closer to the sound source. You don't find it with omnidirectional microphones, which is probably why you don't see it as much with the headset microphones that are omnidirectional. So if it's too close, you know what to do. We can turn down some of the low frequencies with a low shelf, or we can use a high pass filter to get rid of more of that unwanted low end so that it sounds clear again. So let's check out and hear what proximity effect sounds like, and then what we can do to try to fix it. Pop on the headphones, grab a mic. So this is without any EQ or high pass filter. So I'm right up on the mic and we're getting good signal to noise ratio. This is actually great for on stage when it's loud. You can't hear the acoustics of my home studio at the moment because you're hearing mostly my voice, but there's a big bass boost. As I move the mic back and turn the mic up, you can hear that it gets a little bit thinner, or we're less bassy the more that I move the microphone away. So if I turn this back down and get it closer again, you can hear that bass boost that we get. What do we do about that? On our input screen on this one, this is where we control our high pass filter, and we can roll that up until we start to hear some of that proximity effect go away. So it's less pronounced on the bass boost from being close. But again, when I move the microphone away and turn it back up, now it gets thinner. So we might not want quite this much high pass filter on someone with my timbre of voice, right? I sing second bass, right? So you might roll back the high pass filter a little bit right there. It's at 89. So that's going to help when we have proximity effect. You just roll up that high pass filter a lot. One thing that might be faster for you though, if you're having people switch around a lot, another way that I like to take care of proximity effect is if I go to the EQ and I turn on this barbecue fork over here, that's a low shelf. Then I can go over here and turn down the lower frequencies. And if I go back to my
my input screen here, I've got controls for my low band and my high pass filter together. It's kind of nifty that they did that. So I can actually roll down the high pass filter and turn down some of the low frequencies, or I can roll this back up if there's somebody who has a nice thin voice like this. So we can change it around a little bit based on the timbre of somebody's voice just with one little knob. So when somebody comes up to the mic like this, you can thin it out as opposed to it being really full like this. But when somebody's talking like this, you can warm it up a little bit and you don't have to have it thinner again like this. So that's my voice.
However, when somebody moves the microphone too far away, there's really not much you can do. Just pray that it doesn't feed back. You could have gone ahead and wrung out the microphone and taken the frequencies that are most likely to feed back and turned those down a little bit with your EQ during sound check, not when people are in the room with you. This would help you get more gain before feedback for those people that are less disciplined with their mic placement. Now, when it comes to the way that people point the microphone, this is another big deal. On axis, or if we're looking straight down the microphone, that's where it's going to sound the best when it's pointed at the sound source. So if I point the mic here at my mouth, that's going to sound a lot better than if it's off to the side, and I'll give you a listening example in just a second. Some people also will talk across the microphone and put it right on their chin, and that's all right. We've got good signal to noise ratio here, but if they can tilt it up a little bit toward their mouth, that's going to sound better.
So when someone's talking into the microphone like this and it's pointed straight at their mouth, we're getting the absolute best tone out of this microphone. But as we start to turn it a little bit, you can hear that the tone changed and I'm just about 45 degrees off axis. And this is not atypical for how somebody might hold the microphone if they're on stage. So they're pointing it up. To me, my voice just got a little bit more nasally and lost something. I don't know exactly what frequency I lost, but I don't like it as much as when it sounds like this. This sounds much, much better. And I already have some EQ and some high pass filter on this. So as I turn the microphone even farther to the side, now this sounds weird. And that's not, uncommon for people that are speaking on microphones at church. They just hold the microphone up. They think it's going to be fine. They don't know that it's going to sound different. And those are the things that you just have to adjust for. Now, as I move the microphone down, and I'm going to turn it up a little bit to compensate so we don't have level differences, you can see how it got a lot thinner and things are kind of funky now. So I might actually warm this up a little bit, turn up the low frequencies a little bit, and maybe roll up the high pass filter just for safety's sake. In case you get any pops, put your hand in front of your mouth and you get pop, pop, pop. Right, those pops can come through the mic and that's not a good thing. High pass filter helps with that. But now that we're so far off axis, there are frequencies that are jumping out. One that I typically will find is somewhere in the 700 hertz range. And so I'm going to take a little cut there, and that's 4.5 dB, 5 dB, somewhere around there. And maybe that's the frequency that's really bugging me. Sometimes I will sweep this around a little bit to see if I can find where it gets a little bit clearer. If you want to take it to the next level, you can sometimes do one frequency that's bugging you and then go up one octave. So multiply that frequency number by 2. This is 633. So I'm going to take this other high mid band and go to 1.28, 1.28's close enough, right? We're not having to split hairs on this. But if we turn this down a little bit and we make them both a little bit narrower, right? That's the Q control a lot of times. Then we can use a little bit less on each one, and then it sounds a little bit better. I have this problem where I cannot play or speak or perform in some way and judge tone at the same time. So maybe this is horribly wrong and you're like, James, that sounds terrible. How do you know that? But it's just a thing, right? Being a man, can't multitask. It takes separate parts of my brain to do that. So that might happen with you too, especially if you're a guitar player or bassist. Maybe that happens to you as well and you need to watch out for that. Where you actually record yourself or, get a looper or something and play and then adjust your tone on your settings and stuff like that. So pro tip if you're also a musician, judging your own tone. So yeah, the off-axis response is helped by this. Let me turn this EQ off so you can hear the difference again. Yeah, that's definitely not stuff that I like. So I turn it back on and it's a little bit better, right? We're putting a little bit of polish on it. We're not trying to fundamentally change it altogether. Maybe I'll pull a little bit more out and maybe that's helpful. So off-axis doesn't sound as good. It highlights some of these problems in the mid-range frequencies and hopefully you can use your ear and train your ear to hear these and pull them out. This is James Attaway, the reporter, signing off.
So if somebody does have their microphone pointed off axis and it sounds weird, you're going to have to use your ear to figure out what frequency it is that sounds weird and try to bring that down a little bit to cut some of the weirdness out. Now, some microphones like the DPA 2028 and De facto are really clear and smooth even in their off-axis response. So you don't get any coloration or tonal change when someone turns the mic and it's not pointed straight at their mouth. And even though this is the second time I've mentioned DPA, and those mics are the bomb, this video is not sponsored. So if you're getting a bunch of pops and booms into your microphone, I want you to do a quick test for me to understand what's going on there. Put your hand in front of your mouth and say Pop-Tart. When you feel those puffs of air are getting to your microphone and going through the little mesh capsule that's got some foam on the backside and affecting the diaphragm of the microphone. One way to fix this is to either get a better microphone that has a better built-in windscreen, or you can get a puff that goes on top of the microphone. So this is a puff or a foam windscreen, and it goes over top of the capsule here. And yes, it makes the microphone look kinda ridiculous, but people are gonna ignore how ridiculous the microphone looks more than they're going to ignore the pops that are coming through the sound system, finally giving you a Soundtech solo where they turn around and look at you, wondering what it is that you're doing and why you're not fixing it.
Now, sometimes people's pops are particularly problematic. And so the windscreen, yes, it's ugly, but it's better than pops and plosives pursuing you like pomegranate popsicles down the promenade. I don't know what I'm saying anymore, but the puff really does help. And it could be more sanitary as well. So you can wash this a lot easier than you can wash the head basket of a microphone. And, they're much cheaper as well. So if you just need to replace them, if you've got people that spit a lot, the puff is the way to go.
When in doubt, you can use a puff. It's not as ugly as you think it is. Yeah, it is, but you need to use it anyway. Now that we've got the mic placement things dealt with, we can talk about what to do at the soundboard. And the first thing we need to do, and the first thing you'll probably reach for, is the EQ, or equalization, so that we can fix some of the tone things that are wrong with this microphone and make it sound natural again. Now, the first thing that I do on almost every input that I encounter is turn up the high pass filter. This dumps out a bunch of low end below the certain point that you've selected so that it can get rid of it quickly and easily, and it makes things clear in a hurry. I made a video all about it and how I use it for musical instruments and vocals. You can check that out up here. The critical range for understanding speech is from about 300 Hertz to about 3 kilohertz. Everything on top of that is kind of gravy, so we get more sparkle and S's and T's up above 3K, and we might get some low James Earl Jones type richness down below 300. But for most people, we can understand them between 300 and 3K, so this is a frequency range that you really need to dial in and understand so that that can be balanced and pleasant. So for the high pass filter, you can turn it up to 200 or even 300, and it's not going to give you a lot of adverse effects. You're just going to be able to get rid of a bunch of unwanted rumble in that microphone. Like I mentioned earlier, cutting around 700 Hertz, could be a little bit lower, it could be a little bit higher, can be helpful for getting the clarity back and taking out some of the honkiness. It's somewhere between boxy and nasally, so if you can find it, great, and duck that just a little bit. I like to have a low shelf ready to go in case I encounter somebody with proximity effect suddenly, because a lot of times people aren't being very consistent, and if I want to fix their tone all of a sudden, I want to have that low shelf ready to go. I'll set that low shelf anywhere between 100 and 400, depending on how the shelf is set up, and I'm not really looking too closely at what the numbers are here. I'm just trying to get it sounding not muddy again. After you've gotten the lows and the low mids figured out and things are clearer, that's when you can start to listen for anomalies in the upper mid range. Usually someone might have a nasally or a piercing kind of voice, and if we duck that down a little bit, then we can have it sound a little bit more pleasing for everybody. We can bring the apparent fullness back some. Other people might have an exaggeration in their S's and T's, the part of speech we call sibilance, which has a lot of sibilance in the word, so that's kind of fun. These S's and T's hang out in the 4 to 10K range. So if these are out of control and you want to tame it, you can just use a high shelf to duck those down a little bit. Remember, we don't want to make it so dull that it sounds like they're far away. The top end really helps give the apparent closeness. So be careful when you're pulling that out that you don't go too far. Now with compression on spoken word, you don't actually need it for most people that aren't very dynamic. Somebody speaking through a microphone, if it's not having to be on top of a big mix where you have a little bit of sonic space to fit it, if it's just somebody speaking by themselves, compression is not 100% necessary. But if you're going to add some compression, or if somebody is very dynamic, or they have certain emphasis that they're going to hit all of a sudden. And you want to catch that without having to jump at your finger to do so. Compression can be really helpful. With compression on spoken word, I actually use a lot less than I would on singing because singing has to be very dynamic, so I'm trying to get that under control. Spoken word is not typically as dynamic. And so I'm usually aiming for 1 to 3 dB of compression most of the time. Now, there will be the occurrence when someone is very, very dynamic and they go from whisper quiet to shouting at the top of their lungs. And you've got to be able to handle that. And sometimes the compression can help too. If you run into that situation, I found that faster attack times can actually make it sound more crunchy when somebody is getting loud and intense. And that's not really the tone that you want to add with the compressor to their voice when they're already a little bit more harsh, perhaps. So the settings that I like usually have a slower attack time, or I'm using RMS instead of peak. And if you're not sure what all that means, RMS is basically a way of taking average levels rather than peak levels. Except for sound waves, they're oscillating back and forth, and so if we took an average of them, the average would be 0, and that doesn't really help us. So an average of an oscillating signal is called RMS, and it means root mean squared. They will behave a little bit more slowly and less toward peaks and transients like you might find on a drum kit. Now, when it comes to release times on a compressor for spoken word, you're going to want to shift those a little bit faster as well into the 50 to 100 milliseconds range. It's a lot faster than you might if you're compressing a singer. Because the syllables that are coming out in spoken word are happening at a quicker pace than when they do for singing, we want that release time to match that so that certain syllables don't get lost by their compressor not recovering in time. If you compress too much, you can actually get into feedback territory. And we don't want to make stuff feedback. We don't want a sound tech solo. So please don't compress too much. If you need to, just use your digital compressor on the end of your finger to ride the fader up and down. Remember, we're always trying to avoid a sound tech solo. Now let's talk about some more complex processing. The first one is a de-esser. These are not typically built into the channel processing on every channel on your console, so a lot of digital consoles will have these in a rack that you can insert depending on the brand of console that you have. The de-esser is frequency-dependent compression, so that it's just looking at the S's and T's and that part of the vocal range to see when it wants to duck down the level, and it does it very quickly. You just have to be careful because if you de-ess too much, it might sound like somebody has a lisp. So let's pop on some headphones and mix some voiceover tracks. I'd like to introduce you to my friend Butch. Hey, my name is Butch. The church landscaping committee is meeting directly after the ladies' brunch, so please bring your weed whackers and hedge trimmers. Please no chainsaws, though, after the accident that occurred last year. We'd like everyone to leave with all the limbs they came with. Brother Samuel is going to be bringing his trailer for all the trimmings to take with him to the burn pile, so I guess he'll be leaving with more limbs than he came with. So, Saturday, 11 a.m. here at the church. Thank you. Hey, my name is Butch. The church landscaping committee is meeting. So that's simple enough. A little cut around 700. It feels a little nasally, probably from the off-axis mic response from that Beta 87A. So, it's sounding a little weird, cut a little stuff that's, out of place. I also have the low shelf enabled so that if I get some proximity effect and somebody pulls it up to their mouth real quick, I can just turn that gain button or that gain knob down quickly to get rid of more of that low end that gets bumped up that way. So let's listen to Shelly as well. Hi, and welcome to Crosspoint 14th Baptist Church. My name is Shelly, and I'd like to invite all the ladies to a ladies' brunch this coming Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Please bring a quiche to share, but please make sure that we have gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, vegan, carnivore, keto, and kosher options. I will look forward to seeing you there. Thanks. Okay, so her voice is a lot thinner, right? We're gonna have to treat that a little bit differently. Butch had some beef to his voice. Hers was very thin. So maybe even we warm it up a little bit. I mean, we don't want to get crazy and actually cause some feedback by boosting, but sometimes you gotta boost. Or we can cut more in the high mids if we're wanting to do that. So let me play her announcement one more time, and we'll see what we can do about trying to EQ her a little bit more. Hi, and welcome to Crosspoint 14th Baptist Church. My name is Shelly, and I'd like to invite all the ladies to a ladies' brunch this coming Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Please bring a quiche to share, but please make sure that we have gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, vegan, carnivore, keto, and kosher options. I will look forward to seeing you there. Thanks. All right, so we needed to take care of some more of that piercing nasally-ish kind of range, and so sometimes we've got to do this on the fly and just roll with it.
Now let's hear from our friend Robert and his needs at church. And we're also going to try to apply some compression as well. So if you're not familiar with compression, on this console we've got auto mode, and many of the other consoles that you'll be using have auto mode for their compressor as well. This lets you eliminate having to worry about two other knobs, the attack and the release. So I highly recommend that. You can set a ratio between 3:1 and 4:1 and then roll down the threshold until you get a little bit of gain reduction. If you get too much, things sound weird, it gets echoey, it's not a good thing. So we'll EQ him a little bit and then we'll move over to the compressor. Hey, my name's Robert and I'm over all the tech at church. I guess I'm not used to being on this side of the microphone, and wow, those lights really are bright. I guess I do see what Pastor's saying. We are in great need though of sound techs, lyrics people, and lighting operators. So if you have a pulse and you're not blind or deaf or some combination of the two, we'd invite you to a training on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. here at the church. We will have pizza provided beforehand, so if you want to come at 6:30, we can get pizza and we get the good stuff, because we really need volunteers, and I'm tired of doing 17 things all by myself. Just kidding, but not really. All right, thanks. See you then. Okay, so for compression, we want just a little bit. We don't want a lot. We just want to tame off those peaks slightly so that it can get a little louder and be a little less piercing. Dynamic EQ can be really helpful for somebody that gets really harsh when they get loud. If somebody's really dynamic, but you've already taken care of the level changes with your compressor, there might be some tone changes that you might want to take care of as well. And a dynamic EQ like Waves F6 can be really helpful for ducking those particular frequencies that just want to jump out and hurt a little bit. Now, one of my favorite types of processing, especially if we've got multiple MC mics, is a multi-band compressor. The multi-band compressor will compress different frequency ranges so that if one gets out of balance, it will push it down automatically. Some of these might be built into your board, or if you've got Waves plugins available, the C6 or C4 plugin works wonders for kind of taming the differences on whether somebody has proximity effect or if somebody's voice is a little bit more nasally. They can also act as a de-esser, so if you don't want to have too many processors in your chain or things are getting a little bit complex, the multi-band compressor or even a dynamic EQ can function as a de-esser as well. If I've got 4 bands on my multi-band compressor, I'll have the low one go up to about 500 Hertz, and then the low mid one go from 500 to about 1.5K. The high mids I take care of between 1.5K and about 4K, and then I leave the top band for 4K and above. This way, if somebody's a little more nasally or a little more boxy, it can take care of that and try to deal with the proximity effect at the same time. Now, one that I recently tried and I absolutely love it is the Waves Vocal Rider. They make a live version so that it can ignore some of the background noise as well, but it can automatically raise and reduce the level without adding the types of artifacts that you might get from a compressor. All right, now let's head over to the computer and look at some of the plugins that I might try on a spoken word microphone, especially one that's being passed around. So we'll go in order. I've kind of got them set up a little bit for you, but let's check it out. So the first one that I'll try is Vocal Rider. And we'll pop this open. Here we're going to set our target level for where we want it to move around, or the center of where we want it to move around. And in live mode, we can take or increase the spill amount, or how much it's going to ignore background noise. And if the spill is greater, we'll turn that up. We can put it on fast or slow. You can experiment with how this works for your particular speaker. They've got a lot of fast syllables. Fast works better. If they're a little more drawn out and slow and methodical in the way that they speak, slow might be better, but you can experiment with that. So we can see what the target is with this, and then it'll show what the meter is doing. It's going to want to put it around 0 normally, and then it's going to adjust to make it so that our fader essentially is right here. So let's give it a shot and take a listen. To be honest, when it starts up, their range is a little bit different, so it'll change the range for how much and we have our output over here. So let's give it a shot. Hi, and welcome to Crosspoint 14th Baptist Church. My name is Shelley, and I'd like to invite all the ladies to a ladies' brunch this coming Saturday. Okay, so I can see that my target level is too high because my fader is just pushing up the whole time. So I'm going to move this down to about the middle of where that is happening. Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Please bring a quiche to share, but please make sure that we have gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, vegan, carnivore, keto, and kosher options. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks. Okay, so So that helps quite a bit. I'm happy with that. One other thing to think about now, though, is I'm hearing it very clearly, and maybe it's these headphones, but I'm hearing a lot of S's. So we're going to skip over to the de-esser next. And this might be built in on your board. It's not built in on this board. The de-esser, it's a dynamic processor that's frequency dependent. It's only going to look at those S and T type frequencies. We can see over here that we've got the frequency selected here. So we can lower the frequency, or we could raise it to just get the highest of frequencies for it to target. We can see that its sidechain mode is in the high pass filter mode. So that basically means that everything below what our selected frequency point is, it's going to ignore that. It's only going to focus on what's above this point. We can switch this to band pass, which focuses on that as the center frequency of what we're looking at. I typically prefer the high pass, and between 4 and 5K is a good starting place. So let's take a listen to Shelly one more time with our de-esser.
Hi, and welcome to Crosspoint 14th Baptist Church. My name is Shelley, and I'd like to invite all the ladies to a ladies' brunch this coming Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Please bring a quiche to share, but please make sure that we have gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, vegan, carnivore, keto, and kosher options.
All right, so that feels better. We took it too far. It makes her sound like she has a lisp. Let's give that a shot. I'm going to move up the frequency a little bit and then move down the threshold. See if we can give her a lisp.
Hi, and welcome to Crosspoint 14th Baptist Church. My name is Shelley, and I'd like to invite all the ladies to a ladies' brunch this coming Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Please bring a quiche to share, but please make sure that we have gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, vegan.
All right, so I couldn't quite give her a lisp, but you can see that it's compressing even when there's not S's and T's. So that's a sign that you've either put your frequency too low or your threshold is too low. And so backing that off is going to help it sound a little bit more natural.
Vegan, carnivore, keto, and kosher options. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks.
And my audio quality is deteriorating because I'm screen recording at the same time, so I apologize.
Hi, and welcome to Crosspoint 14th Baptist.
Cool, so that's helpful. One more thing, and I want to show you the transition from Shelly to Butch, is C6. And when I have this, I've got my crossover set around 250 on the bottom, and that I basically just take that up as high as it can go. Mids, about 1.5K, highs, about 4.8K. This lets me do some de-essing up in the top middle range, take care of some of the nasally stuff up here, and just kind of balance the warmth and boxy kind of feelings down here in the lower mid range and the lows. One cool tip about this is the threshold control for all of the bands will come over here. So if you click that and pull it up and down, it will move all of those at once, so you're not having to click 17 times. However, you might find that you need to adjust the low band up a little bit compared to the other ones in order to keep things sounding natural. I also, when I'm doing just the 4 bands, I will go ahead and bypass my other bands, my floating bands that are basically dynamic EQ or a narrower band pass, dynamic band pass type band that we have. I'll go ahead and bypass those so I don't get double compression wherever that frequency is set if it's already got some range set up for it. So let's start with this all the way up and turn it on, of course, and then give it a shot when we're moving from Shelly to Butch. He's going to be bringing his tray. Oh, there, we went too far.
Options. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks.
Hey, my name is Butch. The church landscaping committee is meeting directly after the ladies' brunch. So please bring your weed whackers and hedge trimmers. Please no chainsaws, though, after the accident that occurred last year. We'd like everyone to leave with all the limbs they came with. All right, so let's back it up now that we've got it dialed in a little bit.
Free, nut-free, vegan, carnivore, keto, and kosher options. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks.
Hey, my name is Butch. The church landscaping committee is meeting directly after the ladies' brunch. All right, so we can see it's tamed it a little bit. It's kind of pushing down on those frequency bands that are a little bit higher, and it just makes it a little bit smoother. It's a very nice addition. Now, one other thing you could do is the F6. This can help you do what you do with the C6, just a little bit more precise in your frequency ranges that you do. You can select the range down here for how far a band will go, and then the threshold will tell you when you want it to push down. And you can do it for all the different frequency bands here. So if there's something nasally that sometimes jumps out, maybe we go up to band number 4 at 1K, we turn the range down, and then we turn our threshold down. As this goes, let me bypass C6 for now. So please bring your weed whackers and hedge trimmers. Please no chainsaws, though, after the accident that occurred last year. We'd like everyone to leave with all the limbs they came with. So that can help tame particular frequencies if you're having problems with something, but you don't want to cut it all the time. You could also use a low shelf on here if you wanted this to be your primary proximity effect fixer. You just click the low shelf button here and set the frequency and your range so that when the proximity effect changes, you've got kind of an automatic setup here. So links to these plugins are down in the description below, and they are affiliate links. So if you purchase after clicking through, it benefits me, it benefits you, and you get to support the channel at no additional cost to you. So thanks for doing that.
After you get it dialed in and you hear the clarity difference of every word, you'll wonder how you ever survived without it. Not really, you can survive just fine without any dynamics processing on an MC mic or a speaker mic, but I really like it. Now, if you've got a complicated setup with a bunch of different mics and a bunch of different speakers coming on and off the stage all at once, and you don't really know who's going to be there when and who's even grabbed what mic, one way to simplify your setup is to run all of those mics into a bus and then put a multiband compressor or dynamic EQ across the entire bus. This saves processing power, and it saves you from having to dial in a bunch of different ones and figure out what works for each person. Then you just kind of have a safety net to catch everything that's coming at you when it comes to MC mics. Just remember that now you have some post-fader dynamic processing, which means the more you turn up the fader, the more you're turning up the input, and it could be getting compressed more and turn into some feedback problems. So always be aware of what's going on when you have post-fader compression on a bus. So hopefully you've gotten some good tips out of this video, and it'll make it a little less stressful the next time somebody walks up on stage with a handheld vocal mic and you're not exactly sure what it'll sound like. If you liked this video and you want to take your sound training up a notch, I'd encourage you to check out the Attaway Audio Academy. I've got 5 courses that are tailored specifically for church sound techs, worship leaders, and tech directors to be able to take all the mystery and frustration out of sound at church in a systematic way with some extra help from me through our weekly live Q&A. You can find out more at attawayaudio.com/academy, or I'll drop a link down in the description below too. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Comment below to let me know your favorite tip from this video. And as always, remember, it's all about the low end, avoid the sound tech solo, and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. We'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.